This is the WRSU Christmas Eve report. I'm Economopoulos. The mournful wail of air raid sirens echoed throughout Bethlehem and all of Israel today, even as thousands of pilgrims streamed toward the birthplace of Jesus Christ. Hundreds of combat-ready Israeli soldiers lined the streets and rooftops of the village to underscore the tightest security measures taken since Israel captured Bethlehem in the 1967 war. The air raid sirens were turned off as a practice alert. The pilgrims are there to honor Christ. The soldiers are there to prevent guerrilla attacks. Christmas Eve in Beirut is reported to be a nightmare of bombings, kidnappings, and street killings as Christians and Muslims continue bloody warfare against each other. The last of more than 1 million Holy Year pilgrims filed into St. Peter's Basilica today before Pope Paul closed the Holy Door for the next 25 years. Tens of thousands of persons gathered for the ceremonies ending the 1975 Holy War. President Ford today formally entered the New Hampshire presidential primary, his first official challenge to Ronald Reagan in the 1976 campaign. Documents were filed on behalf of Ford by Congressman James Cleveland. The New Hampshire Republican said it would be misinterpreted if Ford did not run in the primary election February 24th. The Soviet Union today denied charges by American leaders that Soviet involvement in Angola is a threat to détente. Without mentioning names, the government newspaper Izvestia attacked Western circles who, it said, misinterpret Soviet motives toward the war-torn African nation. Both President Ford and Secretary of State Kissinger have called on the Soviet Union to stop supporting pro-Moscow forces in Angola. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger pledges American firmness in its dealing with the United Nations and accuses the General Assembly of contemplating irresponsibility in several heated disputes. Kissinger spoke today at swearing-in ceremonies of Samuel Lewis as Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations Affairs. Boston's Logan International Airport was closed for 2.5 hours this morning following an accident in which no one was hurt. A twin-engine plane's landing gear caved in when the Beechcraft was taxiing down the runway after landing. The plane was carrying freight. The Federal Reserve Board today took action to help spur economic growth. The Fed eased reserve requirements for member banks to free an estimated $340 million for loans. The increased supply of loanable money should help reduce interest rates. There will be at least a short delay in postal rate increases scheduled to go into effect Sunday. The Postal Service says it will ask an appeals court Monday to allow an immediate 3-cent increase in the first-class stamp price, which was to have jumped from 10 to 13 cents before the increase was blocked in a technicality. The condition of an FBI informant who was kidnapped, shot, and tortured in an apparent warning by criminals last week has not improved. 30-year-old John Whalen is under guard at a hospital in Mount Clemens, Michigan, and authorities say Whelan's torturers wanted to know what he told the grand jury about a fencing ring. Florida officials say sheriff's deputies and Marine patrolmen arrested 11 persons and seized nearly 5 tons of marijuana in 2 raids today. One of the drug busts took place south of St. Augustine, and the other raid was in the Florida Keys. When it was all over, 4 24-foot cabin cruisers, 4 trucks, and 4 trailers had been seized. Algerian authorities indicate that 3 of the 6 terrorists who seized oil ministers in Vienna earlier this week were European and Latin American extremists who backed Palestinians in the Middle East. Questionings of the attackers in Algeria show that 2 were Palestinians, 1 Lebanese, 2 Europeans, and 1 Venezuelan. Intelligence agent Richard Welch, murdered in Athens by gunmen yesterday, was defended by outgoing CIA Director William Colby today as a dedicated American. Welch was officially listed as a diplomat with the U.S. Embassy in Athens. Colby criticized as paranoid those who revealed his identity as CIA man. Greek authorities have stepped up security for U.S. Embassy officials following the shooting death. Welch was assigned to the embassy and as its first secretary monitored all CIA activities in Greece. An organization calling itself the Union of Officers Struggling for the National Idea has claimed responsibility for the murder and has pledged more incidents. I'll be back with some sports, the weather, and a Christmas story right after this message. It's I could get high and fly on my wheel just to see how it feels. Fly in a car with my friends with a beer in my hand. Can you feel how it feels? Fly. I can drive, I'm alive, and my friends all enjoying the ride. In the car with my friends with a beer in our hands, you can feel how it feels to fly. We can drive, we're alive.
We've got a 1056 here. Looks pretty bad. 7 kids, 2 of them still trapped in the vehicle. Requesting ambulance and emergency service unit.
Drinking and driving is the #1 killer of young Americans. Think about who's been drinking and who's going to drive. Friends, don't let friends drive drunk.
Stand by, please, Central.
A public service message on behalf of the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Central, better notify the coroner's office. We've got at least 2 for them.
On the sports scene tonight, Buffalo Braves center Bob McAdoo, the NBA's leading scorer the past 2 seasons, has been suspended indefinitely by the Braves. McAdoo complained of back pains and refused to play in tonight's game against the Boston Celtics. Braves owner Ball Snyder said today McAdoo was examined by the team doctor and x-rays were negative, but the superstar refused to see a second doctor. In an interview with a Buffalo television station, McAdoo said he would be willing to discuss the situation with the Braves after the holidays, but said the issue did not involve contract difficulties. Buffalo owner Ralph Wilson has apologized to Minnesota running back Chuck Foreman for the snowball incident last weekend. Foreman was struck in the right eye by an icy snowball thrown from the stands. NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle has fined Buffalo owner Ralph Wilson and Los Angeles owner Carol Rosenblum $5,000 each for criticizing the league officials. Just hasn't been Buffalo's day, I guess. It sounds like something out of the fertile mind of Stan Friedberg or maybe Sam Spade, but it's for real. The private detective sits slouched in his dingy Los Angeles office. Cigarette butts litter the ashtray. The telephone rings. A high-pitched voice is heard on the other end. Only then does our man answer. Good morning, North Pole, Santa Claus speaking. The Nick Harris private detective agency is legit, as they like to say. It's been open for almost 70 years, has 172 investigators, and takes pride in its work, especially around Christmas. It seems the agency's telephone number is just one digit away from that of a charitable agency that used to take Santa Claus calls. And instead of telling small children that they dialed the wrong number, the Nick Harris private detective agency simply answers the calls. The charitable group no longer takes the calls, but the telephone number apparently is passed around from child to child, and the calls keep coming. Director-in-Chief Milo Spiriglio has nine of his investigators on his Santa Claus detail, including a guy who does Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and a female operator who plays Mrs. Claus. Says Spiriglio, we never promised him anything. We just say Santa will do his best, and he notes, we get a big kick out of it. It's kind of different work for us. Much of the nation can look forward to a cold and, in some cases, a white Christmas. The mercury dropped to 26 degrees below zero in upstate New York, and there was a lot of snow in the Pacific Northwest, where the road to Paradise, Washington, was closed by snowslides. But for our area, here's the forecast. Fair tonight, mostly cloudy tomorrow, and some rain possible tomorrow night. It's 11 degrees in New Brunswick, so bundle up. That's the news for this hour. Our next report will be at 10 p.m. And now back to Steve Graffiti.